I was going to include a little bit of that in the presentation, but I can tell you a little bit now too. So I live in China right now. I am a former diplomat, but my wife still is, and she is assigned to the U.S. consulate here, and so she gets to bring her family with. So here I am, along with my daughter and my son, and we're enjoying it. We've been here about a year or so. It's very different. We've lived in a lot of other places, including in India, but every place is a little different, and this certainly is too. So it's been a challenge in some ways, but also fairly easy living because it's a pretty developed country. But it's interesting to observe, to have seen what China, read what China was like before we got here, and then to see what it's like here. Not to say that everything I read was wrong, but it's different. In any case, it does make it exciting, and it's certainly a wonderful place to visit. So if you get a chance, I recommend it.
Definitely. I think with most places that tends to happen, we have like a different perception from what we read, and then we actually go to the place and it just turns 360 degrees of sorts. So that's interesting. China is on my list to visit someday. Hopefully that works out. And now the floor is all yours, so you can start presenting.
Sure. What I want to tell to you all, or suggest to you all, really, because I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert, but we're talking about the importance of standing up. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that, and there are a lot of ways to describe it, but I feel a certain urgency right now. So what I want to suggest to you, and in some ways, even though I'm much older than all of you, I still feel like a young person, so I suggest it to myself too. The real reason to stand up nowadays in various ways for various issues is because no one else is going to. A lot of the issues that you're all probably facing and that the world is facing, and I know I'm particularly animated by issues of climate change, a lot of those issues, the kinds of things that we would discuss in the past about being socially active were long-standing things, and maybe you could wait for the government or some NGO or somebody else to help out. A lot of the things that we're dealing with now are urgent, are existential, and the existing power structures that might have been able to do something in the past are not equipped for it. So if you don't stand up, no one else is going to, and at the end of the day, you're going to suffer for it. We're all going to suffer for it, but a lot of the people who are in power now probably won't be affected by climate change, for instance. It's happening very rapidly and it's becoming dangerous, but a lot of those people are running toward the ends of their lives anyway, so they don't think about it so much. And they're in the habit of doing what they've always done. So if you're talking about issues like climate or inequality or migration or the other things that we really need to focus on in order to have a sustainable environment, the existing power structures just aren't built for that. They'll tell you that they're equipped for it. They'll tell you that when you dream of a sustainable climate or sustainable economies and things like that, oh, those are idealistic notions and you really shouldn't think about that. But let me tell you, as an official adult, we really don't know any more than anybody else does. We're just better at rationalizing than younger people are. A lot of times those existing power structures of the grown-ups, the authority figures, are really just lying to you and lying to themselves about what the world needs to do. They're trying to protect their own interests and those of those close to them. Sounds conspiratorial, but it's really just kind of human habit. Give you a little bit of background on myself to tell you kind of how I got there. I've always had this notion in my head somewhere about changing the world and making things better, and never really known how to go about it. I started off in journalism and I did that for quite a few years and I enjoyed it, but I didn't feel like I had the effect on society that I wanted to. I could have some wins here and there, some hits, but generally the system was kind of grinding me down. I got into economic development in various places in the world, a lot of work in Africa, but also a little bit in India and a little bit here in China. And I found that very fulfilling, except when I looked back, stepped back a little and realized that I wasn't having the impact I thought I could be having, the impact that I wanted to have. It was a lot of anecdotal impact, but nothing really very systemic. I then spent some time working as a diplomat, and I thought, okay, this is, I'm part of the U.S. State Department. This is a major, powerful organization. I can make things happen. And I was ground down there too. That system is old and is established and is aimed at doing what it's in the habit of doing, not necessarily changing the world for the better, and certainly not in the ways and with the speed that I think is necessary. I've now stepped away from all of those former roles. I'm writing novels now. I hope they can be effective. I'd be happy to share them with you if you'd like, but they're geared toward telling stories about people who unusual heroes. There's a whole series of them about female heroes, but heroes, people doing things that have an effect on society, have an effect on equity and equality, but from unusual perspectives, hoping that I can inspire somebody else to say, yes, I can too. I can stand up no matter who I am, no matter where I am. I don't have to be some rich guy or some powerful guy or come from one of the traditional powerful countries. Anybody can step up and do great things. I would encourage you to focus on the existing systems, to pay attention to the way they work, even though I'm telling you that they don't work, because you're going to need to work within them. What I want to describe to you in those terms, and I didn't invent this phrase, I thought I did, but I didn't. But I suggest that you are reasonably unreasonable. So you need to have goals and expectations, the kinds of things that you want to change that are ambitious, that are lofty, that will feel to a lot of people like they're unattainable, that the establishment will tell you are unreasonable goals. But you need to approach it from a reasonable standpoint. What I mean by that is you're not going to get everything that you want at the beginning. You may not get much of it over a long period of time, but no matter how much the system tries to slow you down, you have to keep those big goals in mind. At the same time, you have to be willing to bargain along the way. You can never give up the big goals, but you have to take wins here and there and make friends and allies along the way, but always keep in mind what that big goal is. Because the way the power structures often work is you'll approach them with your ambitious goal and they'll say, oh, that's really nice, but how about if we do this? And they'll have a very small sample of that. And that'll happen over and over and over again. And eventually you find yourself fighting for the smallest little tidbit, and you've forgotten what got you started in this work in the very beginning. You got to keep reminding yourself of what that big goal is. Take the little wins, take the compromises, work within the structure, study the structure, go to school, understand how the government works, understand how NGOs work, be able to work with them, but never give up the unreasonable goal, because nobody else is going to support that goal. You've always got to keep it in mind, and feel free to even say it out loud to yourself or to the people that you're working with. Say, I'll accept this little compromise right now. We can make this deal. We can make this small incremental change, but I'm not giving up on the big goal. I'm going to keep going until I get to the point where we need to be it effective work on climate change or economic inequality or what have you. Because it's really easy, the longer you do these kinds of things, for the system, which is much larger than all the rest of us, to wear us down and make us shrink our goals. And you have to resist that with all of your might, because it's a big force to fight against. Society is big and slow and has a lot of inertia. It's going to be hard to really move it, and it's going to want to move you more slowly instead of you moving it. But if you keep the big goal in mind, if you keep the unreasonable goal in mind, you'll have that guide star in your future. But you really can't wait for anybody else to do it. Find other people like yourself, crazy people, unreasonable people who want the big goal. Work with them, partner with them, trade assets, trade ideas, help them, they help you, but never let go of that big goal, because the more you do this, the harder it is to hold on to it. But you gotta paste it to a wall, stick it on your phone, put it everywhere so that you never let yourself forget where it is you really want to go, even though the whole system of life is going to make it harder and harder the further along you get. But again, because these are rapidly becoming existential issues that we're dealing with, you really can't wait for anybody else to do it, and you gotta hold on to the dream. That's the some of the wisdom that I can offer you right now. But again, I'm happy to take any questions that you have based on my own experience or things that I've read or what have you.
I mean, that was pretty interesting. You know, a lot of the points that you raised in terms of also speaking up. I think one part of what you pointed out was that you can speak up in multiple ways. Speaking up is not just talking, it's also writing, it's also, you know, understanding the system and working with it in itself. That is another form of speaking up as well. So that was pretty interesting and in depth. I think a lot of it seems quite deep rooted with the experiences that you've had. But one of the questions we do have on the chat is, could you share an issue you feel strongly for and want to support?
Well, I won't say favorite because it's scarier than that, but the issue that consumes most of my mind right now is climate change, because I'm looking at that as truly an existential problem that is not something that we're going to worry about in 50 years or 100 years. We're seeing its effects right now, and we're not understanding. Most of the world, certainly the US, but a lot of the world is not understanding the multiple effects that it has. It's not just that everything is going to be warmer, or it's not just that we're going to have more severe weather. It is those things, but those things have a lot of knock-on effects, and we don't even begin to understand them. We're going to see a much greater incidence of diseases in places that you wouldn't have expected it, and new diseases that have developed because of a new environment or that have been released because of thawing permafrost and things like that. We're going to see pest issues coming up because as you change the climate in certain areas, the wildlife is going to change, and certain animals will thrive and others will die off, and you're going to have a rapidly changing set of flora and fauna that we don't understand. You're going to see, you know, issues of even of the structure of the earth, because as you have more free flowing water, it's going to change the way water courses run, and it's going to change the sea levels and all kinds of things. And these all have economic effects. They have political effects. They're going to have effects on migration. There's, you know, thousands and thousands of ways that this is going to change the world. And neither do we understand them, nor do we have anywhere near the human capacity to adapt to them as fast as they're going to happen. So even if we could shut off the effects of climate change, or the increase in global temperature right now, the knock-on effects from the climate change we've created so far are going to last for another 200, 500 years, and they're going to be happening in ways that are faster than we can adapt to. So it's going to happen in so many different ways that we're also going to be making a lot of excuses about why it happens, but it's going to have a dramatic effect, I'm afraid, on everybody's life all around the planet. It's possible that some places will become more hospitable, more amenable to agriculture or life or something like that. But in the main, I think we're just going to see rapid changes in the conditions of life, things that happen faster than we can adapt to. And we don't even begin to understand how that's going to affect us.
Definitely. I think climate change is something that's such a pressing issue in itself. And it is one of the movements that one of our participants is covering as well. And she's covering the lens from Sweden, which, you know, really created a dramatic ripple effect of sorts for climate change. So we do have another question, which is a lot more specific from the context of media. And the question is, given how new facets of media like YouTube, etc., are gaining greater momentum and traction and attention, what's your take on how we can use such new means to move forward in movements?
Well, the positive aspect of that is the fact that now anyone can be a producer. So several years ago, when I was still working in journalism, I created a citizen journalism website with that very thing in mind. This was in the early 2000s. And I still believe that that's true. You no longer have to go work for a newspaper or work for a TV station or, you know, get hired by a documentary film company or something. With your phone, with your laptop, with your eyes and ears and questions, anyone can be a journalist nowadays and publish. Anyone could have done it before, but your work would never see the light of day. But now you can post to YouTube, you can post to TikTok, and you can publish your own blog. There's all kinds of ways that you can get your voice out there. The flip side of that coin is anyone can do that, which means anyone can do that. And a lot of people are doing that in ways that are negative and destructive and fact-free, but they also have just as much of a voice as you do. So it's, you know, there's always a two sides to everything, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be daunted by that. We have the opportunity in terms of being able to share our voice and express ourselves in all these different media, and we should avail ourselves of that. I want to believe that the truth will out, that facts will out. Data have more power than anecdote, even though anecdote is what often moves us. But it is certainly, you know, it's a tremendous opportunity, but also a tremendous challenge. And I don't think anybody's figured out how to deal with issues of disinformation and misinformation because of the very benefit of anyone being able to publish. So I think the only answer so far is keep speaking up, keep speaking the truth, and over time, I want to believe that that will win.
Okay, I have a follow-up on that. So would you, is there a certain perspective that you have in terms of making it crucial to control, you know, the information that's being put out, considering the whole idea behind misinformation and disinformation happening, because anyone and everyone is allowed to publish information in today's day and age?
The idea of control sounds good, but where it becomes scary is who does the controlling. And as soon as someone's in charge, you know, which is sort of a throwback to before, when there were just a few channels of media and they were basically owned by large corporations. We all believed the same things because we all heard the same message, but we often all believed the same wrong things because that's what those controllers of information put out. And they may not have been being malicious about it, but whatever the case, we believed the same things, whether they were right or wrong, because that was our only source of information. Now that we have infinite sources of information, yeah, we're going to find some bad information and we're going to have to figure out what's right and wrong. But if we give someone else the decision-making power to figure out which is right and which is wrong, we're kind of throwing ourselves back into the past. It is a challenge, and I'm not saying that we can't rely on other sources to help us figure out what's true and what's false, but I wouldn't want to put all of that power in one set of hands, and I certainly wouldn't want to put it in the hands of government, any government. Even the kindest, most gentle government is still gonna run astray when they have that kind of authority, and they do now, even though they don't have the information authority that they could. So, you know, there are NGOs that deal with fact checks. There are other sources that you can use to help sort out disinformation and misinformation, and they're imperfect too. But chances are, if you've got several of those that you can refer to, as well as your own sense and your own understanding, you're going to have a better chance of triangulating amongst those various sources to figure out what is true, as opposed to relying on one authority to tell you what is true, because that authority can be misleading. But I'll emphasize again, I think I said this before, and I'm a storyteller. I always have been. That's what I do for a living in all of the different roles that I've had. I'm a big believer in story, but story can also be misleading. When we're trying to figure out, when we're trying to sort true information from misinformation and disinformation, we have to rely on facts. That's the differentiator. Anecdote and story can be compelling, and they can be carrying facts, but they can also be compelling in the wrong direction. You can hear an anecdote about immigrants behaving badly, and then it morphs into immigrants are bad. Well, that's not factually supported. The facts are that immigration is an economic and social benefit for everybody all over the world and always has been. But we can be misled by these compelling stories. So we need to rely on as many sources as we can and triangulate amongst them, but we also need to focus on what is factually provable versus what is a really compelling story that may or may not be true.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. I'm going to take in Anushka's one. She says, I really resonate with why having a big, ambitious goal is important. I speak for a lot of young people when I say that there is a lot of uncertainty out there. The kind of feeling that you know you want is something, but you don't know quite what it is. How would you suggest we navigate that? I think all of us young folks do have this question in mind constantly, even though we might have a rough idea of what we want to do. There's still that chaos that's there.
Yeah, there's nothing that says you can't change your goal. So if you believe in something right now and you're not sure that you're going to believe in it in the future, that's fine. You don't have to choose your life's goal at 15 and stick to it forever. My point is, it's really easy to say my goal is to run a marathon, and then school gets in the way and work gets in the way and family obligations get in the way, and then the next thing I know, my goal has become I'm going to run a mile. So if we lose the big goal, the conflicts in society and all kinds of things will very much winnow us down to what might seem more manageable, but what is much less than what we started off with. Even if we change that over time, we have to keep the big goal in mind in order to get anywhere near it. If we let it go, everything else is going to push us back and kind of drive us into the same channels that society has always driven people. And if we keep doing what we've always been doing, we're going to keep going where we've always been going. And I really don't think we can afford that right now. So don't feel like establishing a big goal is a lifetime commitment. It can be, but you can also establish multiple goals and you can change them. I think the point is be ambitious and don't give up being ambitious, because you're your best advocate. And frankly, young people right now are our best advocates too, because you guys still have a lot of ambition. A lot of the rest of the world has given up theirs. So don't let it go.
Well, that was pretty, that gave us some closure, I'm sure. We do have one question, if you could answer in a nutshell, which is to share an excerpt or the main idea of one of your books.
Well, yeah. I've written, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 of them right now. I haven't counted lately. But there's a series of them, 5 of them, called The Primes. And they all focus on women heroes of different ages. Their ages are all prime numbers, but they all kind of come from unusual backgrounds, or at least establish unusual paths in their lives. So one of them is a young girl. She's 17. She's the child of missionaries in Africa, and is breaking out of that as she comes of age and realizing that while her parents think she wastes her time playing games on computers, she's actually created a system of saving other women and young men from sexual manipulation. There's another story about a 19-year-old girl from East Timor who ends up being a badminton champion, but the story winds around in such a way that she wins a great victory for her country in the Olympics that have transformed into being a proxy for war. There's a whole series of them like that. So it's not all young women. Some of them are older, but people from unusual backgrounds in unusual situations who solve problems or create social transformation in ways that you wouldn't expect, which is the idea, because that's often what happens anyway. People don't always follow the straight and obvious path to make a major breakthrough. They often create their own path, but we don't see it until after the fact. This is a way to point out that there are as many paths as there are people, and you can accomplish great things from anywhere at any time. But I'd be happy to discuss the books at greater length, or we could do a whole different session about them, because I enjoyed writing them and I hope other people will enjoy reading them.
Sure, I think that sounded pretty interesting. I'm sure a lot of us will probably go back and take a look. I'll probably email you on, probably getting some of the links for the same, and we can share that across over here. But thank you so much for your time, and this entire presentation was really a mind opener of sorts. A lot along the lines of the multiple ways of speaking up, really getting the understanding of the importance of working with the system, and also just realizing how powerful speaking up is, especially in this digital world that we're living in. So thank you so much, Paul. On that note, we'll be moving on to our next presenter, and you can stay if you'd like, or I'm pretty sure, I think it's a little late for you also, but you can stay on or you can hop off. That's up to you. So thank you so much for this.
I thank you for your time and your attention, and I may have to sign off right now, but I do want to follow up and see how things are going later on, and happy to discuss my books or anything else that you guys want to talk about at any point in the future. You guys have all my website information. Feel free to share it with the group. And thank you all. Best of luck.